All right, it be 5:30 p.m. on September 9th, 2025. The Town Board of Estes Park study session is now in session, and our first topic, business feedback on use of golf carts on trails, presented by Director Greer.
Mayor, just one broad introduction to this one, since it's a bit of an unusual study session item. We typically don't have public comment during study sessions because of the conversation that was started with TAB and the solicitation that the board asked for business input. Director Greer has included a slide tonight to allow business owners present to make comments on how their use of golf carts on trails would facilitate easier business for them. So I did want to make that note because we typically don't do this, but because of the board's direction at a previous board meeting, tonight's agenda item will look somewhat different.
Thank you. David.
All right. Well, good evening, Mayor and trustees. My name is David Greer, Public Works Director, and I'm going to talk about golf carts tonight. These are a couple pictures I took in Lyons, so they're nearby. I'll start off with talking about the Estes Parks Municipal Code. And so currently in our municipal code, we have reference to micromobility devices. And those are devices like bicycles, electric bikes, scooters, electric scooters, segways, all those kind of things. The only really description, or I guess restrictions on those that we have right now is that on the sidewalks, you have a speed limit of 6 miles an hour, and on shared use paths, 15 miles an hour. But nowhere in the municipal code does it reference anything about golf carts, or golf cars, I guess. I should be using the correct term, which I'll get to in a little bit. Municipal code right now just doesn't reference golf carts on roads or on trails. And so here's a couple examples of some trails we have. I had to put the one on the right on Fish Hatchery Road. This is a street view, and there's a golf cart on the road, driving down the road. It captured it. But typically trails, shared use paths, multi-use paths, what we call them, they're anywhere from 8 to 10 foot wide. They're a little bit wider than sidewalks. They accommodate two-way traffic for pedestrians and bicycles and such. Now, for the state model traffic code for Colorado, it defines a golf car, not a golf cart, but a golf car. I found out that the federal government does not acknowledge golf carts as a designation of a vehicle. They're called golf cars. But basically, they have a design speed of about 20 miles an hour, 3 or more wheels. They can be up to 1,300 pounds, which is pretty heavy for a vehicle on our trails, and they can't hold more than 4 people. So there's no statewide allowance for golf carts on public trails. It doesn't even reference the allowance of them on public trail, sidewalks, or shared use paths. It does reference and give the town the ability to regulate them on our roadways. Click again here. So I also wanted to just give you a definition of electric assisted bicycles because those are also some issues we have on some of our trails. But electric bikes are put into 3 different classes. Class 1 is pedal assisted. You have to pedal the bike to actually get assistance from the motor, and it can go up to 20 miles an hour. A class 2 can also go up to 20 miles an hour, but it can be done without having to pedal. Now, a class 3 is going up to 28 miles an hour, much faster than the other 2 classes. So I just want to give you some examples of the different types of classes of electric bikes, because when I did talk to other towns nearby, I found out what they reference, and a lot of them are dealing with electric bikes as well as golf carts or golf cars. So the state model traffic code does allow municipalities to regulate and allow the use of golf cars on roadways, local roadways. The only restrictions that we can't change is the golf cart driver has to be at least 16 years old. They don't have to have a license, but they have to be at least 16 years old. And if they don't have a license, they can't have a passenger under the age of 21 in a golf cart with them. And they are not allowed on state highways. State code does not allow golf cars on state highways, but they do allow them to cross. Now, I reached out to several neighboring cities and kind of got an idea of what they allow. Just about all of them do not allow golf carts or golf cars on trails. A lot of them have references to electric bikes and pedestrians and things like that. Lyons is one town where they, in their code, say that they allow golf cars if they're permitted and posted by the, or signs are posted by the town, they can allow golf cars on trails. That's in their code, but nowhere in the town does that they allow that. Do they allow that yet? They only allow them on the actual roadways themselves. And there are quite a few golf cars parked all around the school. And a lot of kids drive or driven in golf cars on the roadways. But those golf cars have to be permitted. They have to have registered with the city and things like that.
And it mentions select town roads. I think they're not allowed on the actual highways passing through. And the mayor down there drives one incidentally.
Oh, it does? Okay. Yeah, they have a map that shows which roads they're allowed to be on. So it's, it was interesting in Grand Lake, they do have a trail that's groomed for snowmobiles in the winter. But once that season's over, then they say no motorized vehicles and no golf cars are allowed on that trail. Several other ones do not allow golf cars on their trails. Some towns do make reference to if they're allowing golf cars on the roadways, and it goes anywhere from, like Loveland says, they can be within 1 mile of a golf course. Other ones like Lyons has a map, things like that. Continuing to the other towns, Parker is the other town that does allow specifically authorized town leadership via permits to allow golf cars on trails. I don't know if they actually have any registered or authorized right now, but they do have it in their code that it can be specifically authorized through a special permit. Other than that, these are all the towns that I've reached out to, and it's pretty consistent. They don't typically like to have golf cars on shared use paths. And let's see, I think the next, so I do have a slide for any other business owners who want to speak, but I wanted to see if you guys had any questions before we went to that next phase about golf cars.
When we talked about this before, at one point we were talking about very limited distance, like someone who owns 2 hotels right beside each other, going between the two, as opposed to wide open going across town on trails or roads or anything. I think we were talking geographic limits.
Yes, yeah, we definitely were. And some of the arguments were it's much safer just to go back and forth on that trail than it is to go out onto the roadway with a vehicle,
Right.
Things like that. So that was discussed.
That was a consideration. Mark?
What precipitated the conversation? I ask the question a lot when issues come up. What started the conversation, and what is the public interest, or what is the interest in having something like this addressed and put in place?
Well, this was briefly mentioned at one of our last Transportation Advisory Board
What
meetings.
started the conversation?
I think it was, there was maybe some complaints about the golf cars being on the trails. They didn't think it was safe. And then, of course, there are business owners who are like, well, we would prefer to be able to use the trails because we don't want to have to get out on the main roadway. And so there's kind of back and forth, and we thought, well, we better have a good discussion because there's nowhere in the municipal code that references golf cars on trails or roadways for that matter.
Have you heard from a lot of businesses?
A couple of businesses we've heard from, maybe.
We know of 2 businesses that have used in the past or are using golf carts on trails to service. I think they're both hotel businesses, service 2 locations in the same general vicinity that are connected by a trail. And I do believe that we have one of those business owners here tonight, once we get to the second element, which is that business feedback.
Oh, okay. And tonight you're looking for guidance on what the board would say next steps could be in terms of doing an amendment or something that would permit within certain restrictions or not.
Exactly, yeah, that's what we're really looking for is, some feedback, some discussion about it, and maybe some concerns and benefits, things like that.
When do we get to the business owner?
Well, we're there next, so here we go. I'll open it up to business owners, and I think we have one here.
Well, you're representing the whole town worth of business owners here.
I was going to say, there's a whole crowd of us.
Yeah. And what's your name?
So my name's Hannah Hostetler Briney. I'm part of Hostetler Resorts, which has Silver Moon Inn, Hotel Estes, Appenzell Inn, and Estes Mountain Inn.
Yep.
So thank you so much for the information tonight. I wasn't aware that there's nowhere in the code that says anything about golf cars because we have been told by the police that they aren't allowed. So, let's see here, where do I want to start?
The police said they are or are not?
Are not permitted. So several years ago, we were instructed to discontinue all use of golf carts. This has brought about frustration for our business because we see the town using golf or motorized vehicles on pathways to water flowers. We see the rec district use golf carts on the bike path to maintain their path, but then private businesses aren't allowed that same privilege. Well, maybe, maybe not. So we had previously used golf carts on the path between our properties, specifically between Hotel Estes and Appenzell Inn. We have our main laundry facility at Appenzell Inn, so we need to shuttle all of our laundry from Hotel Estes to Appenzell Inn. When it was a golf cart, we averaged one round trip daily between the properties. Maybe 3 minutes. You guys, it's about a block. When we were told that golf carts are no longer permitted, we replaced them with gas-powered Ford F-150s, which creates traffic delays, inefficiencies with our employees, waiting 10 to 15 minutes to enter Highway 34 when it's busy July 4th weekend, for instance, and then slowing down traffic to get on there. We have also switched to wide electric bicycles, which we have been told are permitted, even though golf carts are not. Same width as our golf cart. Have never had an issue with it. But this met our needs to be environmentally sustainable. However, it created a safety hazard for our employees, so we had to pull that back. Riding a big tricycle that has heavy loads of laundry is both a smaller container requiring more trips, and it's easier for our employees to tip over. Although they go the same speed and are the same width.
So what is the total distance that from Hotel Estes to Appenzell? They're right beside each other. Is it like 200 yards that somebody might drive that golf cart, including on the trail?
Correct.
100 yards, 200 yards?
Yeah, there's the athletic club, Blue Door Inn, and then we own Estes Mountain Inn, so we can pull it onto our property right there.
So
Maybe a football field, maybe 100 yards.
do we know, Travis, what the other hotel pair is that, no.
I've heard that reference come up in a number of conversations, but I don't know which hotelier that is or how far apart their facilities are from each other.
I know Coyote and Discovery used to.
Although if we considered something, we could consider a geographic restraint. Okay.
I have a question for the town, and she brought it up, and I agree with her.
Yeah.
So our little garden vehicles, the rec district's golf carts, why are they different than private? Ooh, Travis got in there really quickly. Why are they? Why are they different than private businesses?
Yeah, the fundamental difference is that the town's equipment, the rec district's equipment is on rec district property. They manage the lake trail on behalf of the BOR. The fundamental difference from the town's standpoint and why we don't prohibit our use of ATVs or small vehicles is that we're serving community needs and it's controlled at the end of the day by the town board. So the reason that there's a difference is because it's one organization serving the needs of the downtown, essentially, versus, each individual business is serving their own business needs. That's really the long and the short of it. The use on the highway is permitted through a separate section of state statute and CDOT rules. But in terms of why the town itself allows it, that's predominantly why.
Okay. And I get that. I mean, I understand that, but I also do get the kind of part of what's good for the goose and the gander and everything else. So, yeah, I kind of do have a little bit of an issue with the town being able to do it and nobody else being able to do it. But I understand what you're saying, and it's regulated by the town, and there's a certain regulation there. But I have a feeling that I don't like that. So.
Did you have additional comments?
So I just wanted to reiterate that I think we see 4 main benefits of being able to utilize golf carts. Number 1 is efficiency. A golf cart carries a lot more supplies than our bicycle. Number 2 is our employee safety. Golf carts are safer than bicycles, especially when it's dark or if there are elk outside. We've been knocked off bikes before by elk. Golf carts are a little bit safer for that. Traffic reduction, fewer cars on Highway 34 is the third, to help ease congestion. And then the fourth is the environmental impact. Electric golf cars are quieter and cleaner than gas vehicles, which they've been replaced with. So that's it.
I just have one other question. I mean, since you haven't had it, but the other question I would have would be, if it's not in our policy to have them, if they're not addressed, why is that illegal?
The regulatory aspect comes from the signs that have been placed out there. So that is the town as an organization posting town property with a specific regulation. I do think that is probably something we need to address regardless of whether we open this or close it. We need to clarify that, yes, we intend to regulate golf cart use on trails, because there's lots of trails in town that you would not want golf carts on. And we ran across this when we were doing research for this project, that this apparent gap in a town-wide application. So right now, if you look on the lake trail, there's a sign as you enter it from, at least from the, David?
From the parking garage.
Yeah, from the
Yeah,
parking
it's-
garage,
yeah.
that essentially is creating a regulatory structure. Now, it's best to have that regulatory structure not just happening because somebody put a sign up.
This isn't on the lake path, this is on the sidewalk between, and it says no motorized vehicles, and I just wanna add that.
Hey, Hannah, will you come up and speak on the record?
Yeah.
So I just wanna add that this isn't on the lake path, this is on the path along the highway. This is not on the rec path, which is a separate path that Travis just mentioned. And, that it says no motorized vehicles. What does that mean? Because electric bikes are motorized. But electric bikes, I've been told, are okay, but golf carts aren't. So what is a motorized vehicle? Maybe there should be some clarification for that as well.
Mark?
Well, that was a great segue. I have a lot of the same questions, and I have been involved in a lot of conversations about scooters and e-bikes and bicycles, and micro-mobility devices are a brand new, but we have municipal code regarding them. It's a new issue that we have to sort out. So I also have the question about no motorized vehicles. I'm concerned about getting hit with the new silent killer is that scooter coming at me. Okay, so several things that you mentioned, I had already written down, and I underlined the ones that we're the same on. And I think the advantages of this would be safety, efficiency, and energy. That getting on and off the highway is a real concern, especially for a short distance. A lot of times, if you get on and then you're going to go 2 miles an hour to turn off, that is a great advantage to this. I will summarize I'm going to try to keep the meeting short tonight overall. A challenge has been set down. And I would support this, especially after reviewing the information you did that compared other other towns, I don't think that we want to become a golf car community with golf cars everywhere. There's some energy advantage. It'd be neat. I think it opens up a can of worms that I don't know that the town is ready for. We can't regulate scooters. I think that there's room for this for business owners with Parker's model of a permit for specific use. And I think that that permit could be easily apparent from looking at the windshield to see the orange sticker. So it would be easy for enforcement or easier for enforcement. That if you saw a golf car on the path and thought you could drive your own, that would be easily shut down. This is a great advantage and opportunity for our community to support business, again, and improve safety and be energy-wise. So I would support this with a permit on an individual basis per business with a geographic restriction that you couldn't hop in your golf car at Hotel Estes and then go to Safeway or, yeah, yep. So this, I think we have an opportunity here and I would go with it.
So I'm generally supportive too, although I would not like to see golf cars on the Lake Estes Trail under any circumstances. It's too busy. There are places where the side of the trail is right at the lake. Yeah, I just think that as you mentioned, there are places where it wouldn't be appropriate. Now, Highway 34 up on Big Thompson is perfect. There's a lot of parking areas too that you're going through, and sometimes you can probably get your golf cart to your location without even going on the trail if you can go through the parking lots. But having said that, it seems like really a perfect place for use of a golf cart. So I would support it. I like the idea of the permitting. I question whether one of the requirements should be lighting on the golf cart, since we're approaching that time of year where it's dark most of the year, and that is a concern. So I would support the permitting, but not on Lake Estes under any circumstances, and not. And I would like to consider some sort of regulatory structure to have lighting on the vehicles. I do think e-bikes are way more similar to regular bikes than they are to anything else. So my feeling, and of course, full disclosure, I'm a big e-bike rider. I used to be a regular bike rider, but it's hard to do that up here. So, and I just think e-bikes are fundamentally the same as regular bikes. And if you're going to allow regular bikes, you should allow e-bikes. And scooters are kind of an intermediate thing. They seem similar to, they're not as wide. And so anyway, that's my thoughts.
I'd probably stay away from that topic tonight. We could go on for a long time. That requires a separate discussion. On the golf carts, I like the permits. I like the geographic restriction. The lighting thing, interesting concept. And I would also support drafting, would it be an amendment to that code?
I think what we would likely do is wrap it all into one clarifying amendment that also provides for a permit process that would be administered by staff, and we'll try to keep it simple.
And if we find that that's a deluge of permits, well, we'll consider.
Yeah, and if we don't anticipate it, but if
I
there
don't
were
think that
100
would
that came
occur.
in, we would probably come back to you all to talk about it.
Yeah, especially with the geographic restriction.
Well, and I definitely like the permitting use, and I think that most business owners know that if there became a problem, they could lose that permit. And so they're going to be just as responsible as the town would be about theirs. So I think, and to have I like the idea of having kind of a big orange or something like that permit that people aren't going to like, well, I can ride mine too. Well, no, you can't. You don't have the little orange sticker. So I think that's a really good idea. I mean, not, like I said, not to go to Safeway, but between properties or, I just think it actually saves people. I would like to know if we even have any history of a golf cart being used by a business hurting somebody.
None that I'm aware of.
I didn't think so.
Yeah, I think that's, I'd be interested to see what you guys come up with. I think having it follow a lot of the micro-mobility device, kind of parameters. I think with the golf cart, it's a little different. We need to have that permitting process, the lighting piece, the slow-moving vehicle, that kind of thing. And then just to clarify, we are only talking about commercial use, right? We're not talking that there's any sort of individual residential application for this. Okay.
Yes.
Something I just want to add that goes along with this is we require any staff that drive our golf carts, even around property, to have safety certifications for driving golf carts. I would recommend that you have the business take some sort of safety course, whether that's online or in person, to get the permit, just so that they're aware and at least have a list of know forefront what is expected.
Well, David, you probably have, go ahead.
Yeah, I wasn't quite done yet. So, sorry, I just wanted to also mention that if we could have this, I'm sure this would be part of our communications project, but this seems like one of those things that people who might have been just operating without knowing one way or another, we probably need some pretty dedicated outreach, because like, I know for a fact there are a couple properties on Fall River that do this with their housekeeping vehicles. And I don't think it's to go between properties. I think it's to get to another part of their property that's more easily accessed by going around. So if we could have the chamber or somebody help us make sure that we're engaging with those who, so that people aren't out of compliance simply because they just didn't know.
It's also likely something we'll likely in the coming months be doing some proactive outreach on appropriate ways to use electric bikes, electric scooters. We've seen a proliferation of issues with those devices downtown, especially on sidewalks, disregarding traffic control. So it's something that could loop into there, like, hey, here's some things you need to be aware of if you have an electric device. Don't ride it on the sidewalk. Here are the specific regulations for golf carts. More of an educational blitz overall about how these devices can be safely used in town and where they're not allowed to be used.
Yeah, we have to get control of those. Enough information for you?
I have one question. I know we're only talking about trails right now, but would you also want to look at letting the golf cart go on the roadway between properties, or is it, we're only looking at trails?
I don't like the roadway
I
much.
think, in our presentation, there's a picture of Fish Hatchery Road where that may be more appropriate to stay on one side of the road on the shoulder. But I think that you can write a guidance for the use of these in very limited situations where it may be appropriate. And so I wouldn't lean toward never.
Okay.
There may be appropriate circumstances with a road that we can make the decision on, so I wouldn't limit it.
Okay.
Anything else?
No, I think we got everything we need. Yep.
We'll take a 5-minute break to grab dinner. Thanks all. Thanks. It was Hannah? Yes. Yeah, thank you.
I'd have to look at the map. I can't remember off the top of my head where this is. Well, part of it's town, but there's properties along the road, and the road itself, I don't.
I think Ed's back there. I will assume Ed is back there. You know, he could rap on the glass like they do on Law and Order, you know. 1, 2, 3. Did it blink? Okay. We are back in session for this study session. Wildlife Protection Ordinance Provisions for Commercial Businesses, presented by Deputy Town Emperor Damweber.
I'm not sure if I'm getting promotions or demotions, but as long as they come with a salary increase, I'm okay with it. Wildlife Protection Ordinance and Code Enforcement Philosophy. Thank you for teeing that up, Mayor. A couple of months ago, the town board received emails from a business owner asking for reconsideration of the municipal code to provide exceptions to certain business owners with respect to sections of our wildlife protection ordinance pertaining to refuse containers and how they are latched. The business owner said it was impossible to educate their guests and that by requiring them to unlatch a closer mechanism in order to dispose of garbage had the unintended impact, or could have the unintended impact, of people not properly disposing of their garbage. In other words, they wouldn't lift up the lid, so they would just leave their garbage on the outside of the garbage can. This person further shared their belief that any exception should be granted only to businesses that could demonstrate that refuse containers were well monitored during open business hours. When this came to the town board's attention, I believe it was the mayor who requested the study session, the town board acquiesced. There was also discussion about having a high-level conversation regarding how the town approaches code enforcement. So I think my presentation here is going to be relatively short, and we're more interested in hearing the town board's thoughts on whether or not we should amend the town's municipal code section that includes wildlife resistant container requirements, commonly referred to as the Wildlife Protection Ordinance, and to provide you all with an opportunity to discuss our approach and philosophy when it comes to enforcement of the municipal code. Just very quickly, I've cut and pasted the pertinent sections of our municipal code related to wildlife resistant containers. Right now, our code requires a closure mechanism such as cables, bars, chains, or pull handles, and or a latching device of design and sufficient strength to prevent opening by wildlife. It's got some additional information that we don't need to get into in too much detail. It also requires that wildlife-resistant containers and enclosures and hard-sided containers be kept closed and secure whenever somebody is not in the act of disposing garbage. These requirements probably won't come as any surprise to you, are very common in Colorado mountain towns and mountain towns in general. And in fact, all of Larimer County ascribes to virtually the same requirements as are included in our municipal code. I've linked to the county's code of ordinances in this presentation if you want to dig into that a little bit further. With respect to our own experience, I checked in with police staff, and they said that since the town's wildlife protection ordinance was adopted about 8 years ago now, there's been a dramatic decrease in the number of calls we received related to bears. And at the same time, they reported to me that in the calendar year 2024, they responded to 121 calls for what we refer to as bear versus trash. That is, I'm sure, a much smaller number than the actual encounters, because I personally know lots of folks who have had bear versus trash encounters that didn't bother calling the police about it. And to skip a little bit ahead to our code enforcement philosophy, nobody called to report the bear versus trash issue. And just today, I slapped this in here, just today, there was the Colorado Parks and Wildlife put out a press release about a bear attack that occurred last night, actually in Boulder County, and it was related to trash that was not secure. So that's just to illustrate the fact that this is a real-time issue that that lots of places are dealing with. So switching gears a little bit to our code enforcement philosophy, you all are aware that our police department has 23 sworn officers, but we only have one code enforcement officer position. That person generally works a regular business day from 8 to 5, although that schedule can change based on needs. While all of our officers can enforce the town codes, there's a different focus that our sworn officers have than our code enforcement officer has. The code enforcement officer's focus is ensuring compliance with local regulations and ordinances mainly related to property maintenance, zoning, and public health and safety. Because of our limited staffing, and this is very common in municipalities our size, our approach to code enforcement is really almost entirely, I have largely, but it's almost entirely reactive and complaint-based. Sometimes we get direction from the town board to look into certain things, or we'll get complaints or reports of violations from residents, and that's when our code enforcement will respond. While our officers and all staff, for that matter, are out in the community, they're vigilant, and if they notice an egregious code violation, they can also be the source of reporting it to our police department or our code enforcement officer. This isn't the best case scenario. We acknowledge it can lead in disparities where reported violations are addressed, but there are similar violations elsewhere that aren't addressed because they're not reported. As I mentioned before, this is pretty common, and especially in smaller municipalities like ours. Ambiguous code language can complicate things too. As you all are well aware, especially in light of recent discussions about noise, there is a level of discretion involved. With our wildlife protection ordinance, it's pretty clear cut. It's pretty black and white. Either the garbage can is closed and latched, or it's not. With noise, there's a level of reasonableness. It depends on where noises, sound travels in strange ways, and it can sound differently from people's vantage points, even when they're only a few feet away. And that's why I note that the code language that allows for discretion can complicate things. Whether there's ambiguity in the code language or not, our approach to code enforcement is almost always with education, rather than issuing citations. Citations are issued if there's repeated complaints or there's an egregious violation. And so typically, if there's an offender, we let them know that they violated the code and what they need to do to correct that. A lot of times people aren't even aware that they're in violation of the code, as we heard a little bit earlier about golf carts on trails, for example. We also, when there's a code change made, we often have larger educational campaigns for 6 months or a year, for example, before we start issuing citations. So that's all part of the education. It's from an administrative standpoint, it's very difficult to have exceptions or exemptions, especially on an individual basis. And germane to the discussion about the wildlife protection ordinance, and to dive a little bit deeper into the last point, it's worth noting that the making exceptions for certain businesses further complicate things. In addition to being aware of code requirements, creating a process for individual exceptions at staff discretion would mean that our officers would have to know who has been exempted from the code and why, and that could change periodically, what their business open hours are, which could change day to day, depending on the business. Things like that. These exceptions could be ever-changing, they'd be hard to keep up with. Businesses or residents could come and go off lists based on eligibility and compliance. And again, I think the widely varying operations from business to business could complicate things. And then there's the discretion angle as well. And that's larger commentary, not specific to the wildlife protection ordinance, which, as I mentioned before, I think is pretty black and white. Considering the matter at hand, while the code requirements related to wildlife-resistant garbage containers are clear, if we made exceptions, we'd have to determine what, for example, regularly monitored meaned. The person who brought this to the town board's attention said that there should be exceptions only for people who can, or businesses that could demonstrate that their garbage cans are regularly monitored. But we don't really know what, we would have to define what regularly monitored means. For example, if they're regularly monitored, would there be garbage outside of the garbage cans? And so for a lot of these reasons, staff would generally recommend against making exceptions to the code for individual businesses or residents. To my knowledge, we don't currently make individual exceptions at the staff level for any regulation in the code. And so that's kind of my spiel. And so the questions before the town board are whether or not you'd like to see any edits to the wildlife protection ordinance. If so, should certain businesses or should certain businesses be exempted? And in general, what are your thoughts on the town's current approach and philosophy to code enforcement? And I'm happy to answer any questions, and I know Town Administrator Mahalik and Town Attorney Kramer are open to questions as well, and I may need to look at them depending on what questions you have.
Having dug into this, I appreciate that you have made the presentation. What do you think the spirit of the ordinance is? Is it to make sure that there's a latch on your dumpster at all times, that you're not putting trash in it? Or is the spirit of this law to keep trash from spilling out and attracting bears? Because if you didn't have a lock on your dumpster and bears never came, there would never be trash out and it would never be a problem. And the crows and all the things that get into trash. So is our objective with this ordinance making sure that your latch is fastened or that your trash doesn't leave your enclosure?
Wow, that's a good question. I think the spirit of this is to prevent bears from wildlife from getting into trash, which creates all sorts of potential issues, safety of the bears, safety of residents, as we've seen.
Do you know if the complaints that have brought this to the conversation, are the complaints about trash being everywhere or that someone did not latch their bin?
These complaints that we have heard are related specifically to somebody reporting a violation about garbage cans being open. I do not know whether or not there was garbage around the garbage cans. I don't think that in either of the instances. And we actually went out one day, provided education, and then it was a day or two later, we got another report of the violation and went out and did not cite the person. We educated them again. And I was not made aware of any issues with bears in those instances or garbage around the garbage cans.
From my perspective, having looked at even just last week a dumpster on its top that didn't come open when a bear went after it, and it was successfully latched closed. We also see pictures on social media shaming businesses who have trash from their dumpster. Mm-hmm. For me, this ordinance is about preventing trash from leaving the enclosure. Whether or not it's latched or how it operates during the day, I wouldn't bring a code enforcement officer in to say, latch your bin, but I would bring in code enforcement to write a hefty fine if there was trash outside of the enclosure. And that would give the business owner the opportunity to make their own decisions about how they would secure it if they followed this. Because when I read the rules that we have, the laws that we have, you could interpret it, an attorney could interpret it many ways. Could you interpret it, I should say, that the latch didn't have to be in the fastened position, but it had to be equipped with a latch? And if I don't have a dumpster with a latch, for the record. I've never had a trash incident. I'm not advocating for myself. But could you put the trash in a dumpster and not fasten the latch and be in compliance with the law?
Good question, Trustee Igo. Let me take a look at the code with that question in mind, and then I'll report back.
So my response to this whole thing would be, if trash is being spilled out of the enclosure, fine. No, it's not okay. That's a fine, that's a money fine. If trash, that's fine. I used to think the signs on the side of the road, no littering, $1,000 fine. I swear to you, as a child, I thought, for $1,000 you couldn't litter. So I'm not advocating for that. And I would say our code enforcement could enforce, there's trash outside, you get fined. If we don't have trash outside of the dumpster, we're not attracting bears, we're meeting the spirit of the law. I wonder how that will fall on the legal ears and minds in this conversation. And
Jason, if you go to the next slide, I think we would have to change this section. Kept closed and secure. when
so what
refuse
is secure? Closing the lid? Ravens can't get in? Raccoons can't get in?
I
A bear
think
could get
secure
in.
is using section 72020A
Shall have is shall be equipped with.
closure mechanism and/or a latching device.
And
So I
you're
think
saying kept
secure would
secure
be-
might involve the eyes of the proprietor watching it.
I'm saying that if we want to meet the spirit of the law and not change anything, we're okay. If we change the way that we enforce it to meet the spirit of the code, that may give a business owner the space to secure their trash. Maybe we raise the fines. Maybe we, by giving them that responsibility, we also give them a consequence. But I think that to put that little pin in the bar across the dumpster every time somebody puts a bag of trash in, I have seen bags of trash put on dumpsters because it's a lot of rigmarole to get it in the secure prison for trash. I want it to be successful, and I do not want wildlife in the trash. But I want to be reasonable at how we enforce that.
Did you have something else, Travis, that you, okay. Can you go back to the last slide? I'm gonna make it, sorry, the one where you ask us some questions.
Sorry.
I'm gonna make it really simple. Nope for 1, nope for 2. And I think if I understand what Mark is getting at for number 3, I think in general I agree with the philosophy. I'd much rather have us be educational, especially for if we've got a new business owner in town, not aware, we're trying to just make sure that the spirit of the law is enforced. But we have to make it effective too, while balancing that nitpicking from certain very enthusiastic neighbors or residents. We have to find that balance. So the PD's data about how, we're still getting those calls. It happened to me 4 times with one neighbor in my neighborhood this summer. And that's residential, so the issues are gonna exist no matter what. But if we're seeing those calls reduce and we're seeing bear activity hopefully somewhat improve, it's not perfect, then I'm supportive of our approach, because then it could be assumed that our approach is effective. I do agree with Mark that I wouldn't be opposed to if we have repeat offenders, making sure that the consequence is strong enough for that. I don't know if that's exactly what Mark was suggesting, but I like our educational approach, and I want to make sure, I don't want to change it. I think there are business solutions, having been a business owner in this community, I think there are business solutions for how to ensure that we follow the code and educate our guests and our clients and use, our staff tools to not be a problem for our wildlife. It's part of living here in this community, and I think our ordinance is really reasonable.
So I have a unique situation. I've got a bear-proof container. It's at the end of my driveway. It is bungeed to a tree because if it's not, it ends up all over the place. Not the garbage, but the container. And the problem with bungeeing it to the tree is that the lid doesn't stay open. So I had to figure out a way to hold the lid open to get garbage in and for my garbage people to get the trash out. I have sent them, so what I did is I put another bungee on one of the branches that then when you open the thing, you can hold that other end of the bungee into the latching mechanism so that it stays up, and then you take it down. So I have sent this and pictures of this to my garbage collection people because they've complained about this time and time again. And I've sent them, and I'm going to put up a sign, I haven't done that yet, with pictures on how to do this. So the next time they have somebody that hasn't picked up garbage there, I don't have to deal with that again. If I owned a business, I would do that on my garbage trash container if my customers, my tenants, whatever, were not using it. It's a simple way to educate them on how to move the bar and stuff like that. So I agree with Trustee Hazelton on no to one, no to two. And I do think that the approach we're taking for enforcement is really the only practical thing to do in a community our size. So I support that.
I support no. The issue is that, so, and these are all bringing up our personal ones, but that's how we have information. So I have a large dumpster that has a bar. The lid is so heavy that I actually have to almost use two hands to get the lid up. I can't push it open, so it has to have either somebody opening it up and the other person getting it in. But a bear could open it, there's no question, without the bar. During the day, is a bear next to it? I've never seen one there, but it doesn't mean there couldn't be. But I do know that some of the places that have the trash cans, like one that's up by like Subway, that you can do with one hand and pick it up and throw it in there, I think those are easy enough that people aren't leaving it on the ground. I think that when you check into a campground, they give you information, a lot of information. And, you know, I do think that I understand there's always going to be people that are going to leave trash on the ground. There's people going to leave their dog bag, poop bags on the ground right next to a trash can. But in general, when you check into a campground, they give you a whole list of instructions. And majority of people, I think, try to listen. And even if they add to the thing that if even the campers are repeated offenders, they can fine them. So I don't think there's a reason why they can't educate the campers coming in. They can educate what the checkout time is. They can educate as to what the loud noise time is. So I think they could educate them on the trash can. So I would not change anything.
Mark, Trustee Heigl, did you answer the question specifically?
No. I would just repeat what I had said before and be mindful of the spirit of the law.
Got it.
And then determine what the criteria is to be a violation.
Mayor and Trustee Eigel, I want to loop back to Trustee Eigel's earlier question. Long story short, I don't see any other way to read the ordinance than to say that when there's trash in the can, it has to be latched or secured with that security mechanism that makes it a secure container. So that's my read of the ordinance, and I think that's pretty clear cut.
4 of the 5 trustees up here have done a no, and just had general comments on philosophy. That is probably sufficient for next steps.
Yeah, and I would just note that I do think that our code enforcement folks do exhibit a high level of reasonableness, as evidenced by the fact that back-to-back reported violations, which were reported, and we were required to respond to them, were met with education and not a fine or a citation. So,
Yeah, I like the general code enforcement approach as described. Okay, I think that's sufficient for this topic. We have the opportunity for trustee and administrator comments, future study session. Agenda items, Travis?
Mayor, one future study session agenda item. This is a strategic plan objective from the board. We'd like to talk to you about the guiding philosophy for events at a study session on November 25th.
Okay.
That's all I have.
Trustees, any other additional study session topics?
Because we have the time and it's come up in public, and I actually have an idea and a solution, so it's going to just cross it right off the list. And I want to publicly acknowledge that maybe there's some thought going on with regard to the suggestion that we lift the charge for parking during certain parts of the week. And while I think that the idea has merit a lot, and I think that there's an opportunity in it, I don't think that we can move quickly enough to make any sort of meaningful impact on this season. The parking season ends October 20th. The first time we'd talk about it officially would be the 23rd of September. By that time, it's a week to get supplies, a week to make the change. We have a day of free parking. And so I don't think that the effort would be worth the outcome. And I think we have an opportunity to look into more information from the parking manager. I think that we have an opportunity to talk about it for next year, if it's something that is an opportunity that we see in a softer part of the year. But I don't think we can make it go quickly enough this year to have a conversation and speed through it. So I wanted to acknowledge that I heard the comment that there has been some conversation that I'm aware of about it, and that I think that that's where it would end up. I don't know if there's any other opinion on it, but I'm not going to bring it up as a recommendation or a study session topic. I'm going to bring it up during the course of our planning for the next year.
So at this point, you're not asking that it be slotted in the winter?
No,
or-
I have no
Okay,
request.
all right.
So I don't have a specific request, but it's been a while since Whimsadoodle came to talk to us about Cleve Street. And I really would like to see if that has legs to it and there's some basis for us to begin a discussion about that, because it seems like it's kind of perfect alignment of the stars to a certain extent, to have a well-heeled charitable trust and the town and private business interests connected, because there's been not a lot of that sort of collaboration done in this town. And this is a great opportunity for it, and I just think we need to pursue it aggressively. So I don't know what that's involved. I think there's probably stuff that would need to be done before a study session, but we could do a study session after that background work we're done. Because I'd like to see whether that really does have legs. It seems like a great opportunity for us.
Do we want to invite them back for another study session item at some future point?
I would think we need staff to pursue this at the moment.
Right.
I think it's premature at the
Got it.
moment, but.
Anything else? All right, study